Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's DAF Hayomi, Bava Kamma DAF Samach Daled. We are holding on Samach Gimel Wed May, 3 lines off the bottom of the Yomit. Nafgalei miditana debei Chizkiah. So where are we holding? We learned in the Mishnah that a ganav, a person who stole something and was caught, he will pay back double the amount that he took. He pays kefil. How do we know this halacha? So actually, the Psukim discussed this several times, and one time we have a discussion regarding a shomer. So a fellow entrusted, he deposited something by his friend, who is now a shomer, is meant to look after it and care for it. Come a time to retrieve his item, the shomer presents a story. He says, well, it was stolen, and he makes a shavua, he makes an oath to defend his position. It turns out that he himself diverted the item, he took it for himself. The pasuk says, you pay kefil. So despite the fact that he took it, beheter, he didn't steal it, it was given to him as a pikadon, but since he misused it and falsely presented as though it was stolen, he's the ganav, he pays kefil. So we have several psukim. One pasuk speaks about a toyin tanas ganav, right? A fellow who falsely presented a claim as though it was stolen from him. It turns out he is the ganav himself. He will pay the kefil. So we have one pasuk which says im lo yimotzi ganav, and the Gemara yesterday taught us it's referring to this type of fellow who falsely pretended that it was stolen. Im lo yimotzi, if it will have been discovered that the facts were not as he presented. Im lo yimotzi, k'moisha amar ela shehu atzma ganva, he himself stole, he pays double. So im lo yimotzi ganav, according to all opinions, refers to a toyin ta'anas ganav, a shamer who falsely, pretended, falsely argued that it was stolen. Then we have a pasuk im yimotzi ganav, if the ganav will be discovered, will be caught. What is that going on? So according to one opinion, it's going on a regular ganav, a regular thief who stole something in the middle of the night. If he was caught, he pays double. So we have one pasuk for a ganav, one for a toyin tanas ganav, and we're all set. But according to the other approach, which we learned yesterday, that both psukim, the pasuk of im lo yimotzi ganav is going on toyin tanas ganav, and the pasuk of im yimotzi ganav as well is going on toyin tanas ganav, as discussed yesterday. So then how do we know that a regular, ordinary ganav who stole something in the middle of the night will pay kefil? Well, let's say we'll just learn him from the toyin tanas ganav. The problem with that is, well, then a shvua is a required element, just like by a shomer who's a toyin tanas ganav, he only gets the kefil if he, first defended his position with a shvua. So perhaps a regular ganav will only likewise be liable to kefil if he did a shvua, which is obviously not correct. So we're going to go on and search for another possible source to teach us that a regular ganav will pay kefil. Says the Gemara 3 lines off the bottom. Nafgalei miditana debei Chizkiah. We learn it from the Brisa taught in the Beis Medrash of Chizkiah, the Tana debei Chizkiah. We have yet another pasuk discussing the kefil with respect to stealing all kinds of items. The pasuk specifies a shoyer, an ox, a chamoyer, a donkey, a seh, a sheep. Right? So the question there is, why all these specifics? Why this entire list? Now, before we begin, we're meant to know that the Gemara from here, for the next 15-20 lines, will sort of just present, the Brisa of Tana debei Chizkiah pretty much verbatim, so exactly as it was presented, but we don't yet understand it fully until the Gemara will later go on and sort of review it and explain it. So first, let's just see the words. Why does the pasuk have to go and list the shor and the chamor and the seh? It is suffice to say gneva. Im himatze timatze biyadei hagneva, right? It will have been discovered that he's in possession of the stolen item, And then it says Mishor, Vad Chamor, Ratz Chaim, and they're alive, Shnaim Yishalim. You pay double. Why this whole comprehensive list? Just say Gneva and Shor, and everything's included. Because we'll just sort of compare everything to the Shor and say, well, anything that's something of value, something that is an object, right, will trigger the kefil payment. Well, says the Gemara, ilu kach, because if it were so, I would very much limit the items that have potential kefil. What's unique about the prat? If we would just say gneva, which is a general term, and shur, which is a specific term, what's unique about a shur? It can be brought as a korban. Af koil, korev, l'gavim mizbeach. So you can only include another item which has that same potential. So bottom line is, you'll limit kefil to only things that can be brought as a korban. Okay, for instance, what like what? A seh, like a sheep, right? Well, it says seh in the pasuk. Right? It already says seh. If that's all it's coming to include, it already says it. Shoimer seh, hari seh amar. So why does it say gneva, which is a general term? Again, if we're limiting our kefil application to something which has potential for hakrava, then it doesn't have to say a general lashon of gneva, which sounds like anything. It already says seh to tell you only something which is karv l'gavim mizbeach. Hamani mekayim gneva. Why does it say gneva, which is a more general, all-inclusive term? L'rabbi is kol davar. Apparently, including all other items that were stolen as well, for the triggering of the kefil halach. Well, then the question is, okay, so yoymar shur se'u gneva v'kol b'chlal. Let it say gneva, which is a general term, shur, which is a specific term, klal. So we get sort of the klal and the prat, which allows us to include other things, and don't limit it only to things which occur l'gabe mizbeach, because it says se'. So we'll include everything. Ilu kach, the answer is, if it were so, I would still limit my list. I would say ma prat mufurish davar hakadosh b'bchira. What's common to shur and se'? They both have potential for kedushas b'chira. If they're firstborn animals, they're kaddish. Af koil davar hakadosh b'chira. So perhaps we could only include in this context if it's something that has kedushas b'chira. Ma'esh alahavi. Okay, so the Gemara responds. For instance, what would you include? Other animals that have kedushas b'chira, whether they're kosher animals or non-kosher animals, like a chamar, right? Firstborn donkey has a kedushas b'chira. But it says chamar in the pasuk. If it's only coming to include b'chira potential, then it says chamar. Once it says chamar in this pasuk, hari chamar amar. There you go. You have the chamar. Hamani mekayim gneva. So then, why then does the pasuk use a general term if we're being specific and limiting to only things that have b'chira? L'rabbi kol davar, apparently to expand and include other things as well. Okay, well then yoymar shor v'chamar se'u gneva. So let it stop there. Let it say gneva, which is a general term. Shor, chamar, se, each one has its own specific role, right? So yoymar shor v'chamar se gneva kol b'chlal. Now we include everything. Why does it have to say chaim? Answer: ilu kach, because if it were so, I would say, well, we're still limiting, we're still restricting. Ma prat nefurish bali chaim. What's common to a shor, a chamar, and a se? They're living beings. Av koil bali chaim. So perhaps kefil only applies to animals. Ma'esh l'chalahavi. So what would you include now? Shar bali chaim, all animals only. Okay. Shu aimer chaim, hari chaim amr. Or bali chaim amr. So that's why the pasuk said chaim, include all living creatures. So still, why does it have to say hamani mekayim gneva? Why does it have to say a general term called gneva? Which is a general phrase which sounds like we're coming to incorporate other items as well. L'rabbi is called davar. That's the punchline. So we learn from here that all items stolen will generate kefil. Pretty much all items. We'll have some very specific exceptions. We'll see later. Okay, so this is the brisa, pretty much word for word. Now let's go back and analyze and try to understand the brisa step by step. Amamar. So what did we say? Why does the pasuk have to elaborate so much? Such an extensive list. Yoymar shor u'gneva. Let it just say shor and gneva, which will pretty much include a general term. Gneva is general, gneva, and shor is a specific item, which would allow us to include everything. Well, what do you mean? First of all, miksiv shor gneva. Does the pasuk say it in this order? Shor, which is a prat, and then gneva, which is a klal, which would allow you to sort of heap everything, add everything onto the list. Because that's the way prat and klal works. When you start with a specific and then you go into general, so you're sort of expanding it to incorporate everything. It doesn't say it this way. Miksiv shor gneva. That's not the way the pasuk says it. First it says gneva v'shor d'chsiv. It says imimotzi v'deha gneva. Then it says shor. So it's the other way around, and that pretty much changes the whole ballgame, because when you start with a klal and move on to a prat, so it has the opposite effect. First it's big, and then you say no. Limit it and restrict it. So then what's the whole kasha? How could you even suggest to include everything when it's a klal followed by a prat? Perhaps the Brisa meant ilu nema kama. If it would have said it the other way, meaning why didn't it say it the other way? It could have saved so many words. Shor and then gneva, klal, prat, include everything. Ilu nema shor gneva, then you would include everything. So then, what's the Brisa's response? If that's the kasha, what's the answer? It's a good kasha. There's no answer. Then how can you respond to that and answer? Ma prat mefurish. Well, if it were so, then the prat, which is shor, is very specific, and you're running into restrictions. What do you mean? We're not going with klal and prat, which would limit it to the prat. Have a shor prat. Ugneva klal. It's the other way around. You're starting with a limiting expression and then expanding it. That allows you to broaden your horizons. It's a prat and uklal. And what happens then? Nasa klal moisef ala prat. Visrablu kol mili. That's the way it works. The prat to klal formula works very differently than a klal and prat. Klal and prat is limiting. First we start big and we say, no, be careful. It's only this, that. But when you start with a prat, which is small scale, then you go klal, you're including everything. So you're not limited. So what do the Brisa mean? I'll tell you why you can't, because of limitation. There are no limitations. Apparently the Brisa just meant to say, okay, let's focus on the way the pasuk says it, which is gneva v'shor. Right? So the question is, the pasuk says gneva v'shor. Right? Matzah to matzah b'yad gneva klal, and then shor is a prat. Mimatzah amr sakol b'chlal. So then, what does the Brisa mean? Well, then everything is included, and then the Brisa continues, or the Brisa says ma prat mefurish, that you can include pretty much everything as long as it conforms to the elements found in the specific example. So all these expressions and responses the Brisa presented, it doesn't work if we're working with the way the pasuk says it, klal and then prat. Why? Because when you have a klal followed by just one prat, it's not klal prat or klal. Klal prat or klal allows you to sort of include things which are similar to the prat. That's what the last klal is coming to do. It's coming to say, look, general, specific, then let's broaden it a little bit. That's the last klal. Well, you can't do that when it's just a klal and a prat, a two-step formula. Because havale gneva klal, gneva is klal, v'shor is just a prat, and when you have a two-step formula, klal prat, then you're very limited. Klal prat ein b'chlal el mashu prat, which basically says shor in. You can only allow the shor into this door. But everything else is shut out. So what's going on in this Brisa? Right? If we look at the pasuk the way it is said, which is klal followed by shor, so it's klal and prat, very limiting. So how can you even suggest to include other things? Amar Rava Tana Achayim Kosamich. I'll tell you how we get to klal, prat, and another klal. You know what that third klal is? Chayim. At the end of the pasuk, it says Chayim Shnayim Yishalom. Chayim, all living things. So that gets you the three-pronged drasha. Uklal, uprat, uklal, kamar. So we have hagneva, it's a klal, shor is prat, and chayim is another klal, which allows you to include things which are similar to the prat, which share some characteristics with the prat. Says the Gemara, how do you compare the first klal, which is gneva, all stolen goods, with the last klal, which is just chayim, which is living things, which is still limiting living things, creatures, animals. Well, you can't compare the last klal to the first klal. It's actually sort of joined in together in a klal prata klal formula. Says the Gemara, that's not a problem. Hatana, the Rabbi Shmuel, our Tana of the Bryce is going like Rabbi Shmuel. The Kai Gavna, Dorish, klal prati. That he does apply the klal prata klal formula, even when the two klalim aren't so necessarily on the same track. But ultimately, it's a general term. Chaim, it's expansion, it's broadening, and allows us to sort of make the klal prata klal. And the Bryce meant to ask like this: why does the pasuk have to begin with the words "imi matzei timatzei"? Right? Matzei we had that gneva will be discovered. Right? The gneva will be discovered in his hands. Why this whole, dramatic presentation, which sounds like it's a riboy, all types of things found in his hands? Why? Just stick to the klal prata klal. Yoimar shoyer ugneva. Some gerses go the other way. Yoimar gneva v'shor. Gneva is a klal, right? Any gneva, and then shor followed by a prat shor. V'chaim followed by chaim at the end of the pasuk, which we just established is another klal, right? So we get the three-pronged system. Hakol b'klal, include everything. Klal prata klal. And on that the Gemara answers, the Bryce answered, Ilu came, because if it were so, meaning if we just have this pasuk without the words himatzeh timatzeh, I would say, right, that's the whole Bryce. I would say we're still limited. Ma prat nefurish davar karv got mizbeach could only include animals which can be used for potential karbonos, like a shor. Av kol karv got mizbeach, any animal that conforms to that, fine. Ma'ishal lahavi. So what would you include? Meaning, what would be included in that, under that banner? A seh, right? A sheep. Kshoimer seh, but it already says seh in the pasuk. Harei seh amar. Hamani mekayim gneva. So why does it say gneva? The rabbis called over to include other items as well. Okay, so then Yoimar gneva v'shor v'seh v'chaim. Let it say gneva, which is a klal, shor v'seh, which are two pratim, and chaim, which is another klal. V'chol b'chal, all included. Why do we need himatzeh timatzeh? Ilu kain, if it were so, I would say ma prat mefurish davar hakadosh b'cheres. Still, there's something in common to shor and seh. They're all potentially kadosh for b'chera, afkol davar hakadosh b'chera. Likewise, anything that has that same potential. Okay, but what would you include in that? Ma'ishal lahavi. What would you add on that list? Lahavi chamar. Right? Ma'ishal lahavi chamar. You include the chamar who has kedushas b'chera. But it says chamar in the pasuk. We don't need a drasha for that. Kshoyim chamar, harei chamar amar. Chamar is automatically there. He's in the pasuk. Ha'amani mekayim gneva. So why does it say gneva? Why do we need the klal? The rabbis called over to include all items that were stolen. So then the question is, okay, we have the klal prata klal worked out, but it should just say the klal prata klal. Why do we need himatzeh timatzeh? Right? That's the question. Yoimar should say gneva, which is a klal, v'shor v'seh v'chamar v'chayim, which are all these pratim, v'akol b'chlal, which allows us to include everything. And why do we need the himatzeh timatzeh? Right? Ilu kain for so Yisrael would say ma prat mefurish balechayim. Well, all these things are still living beings. Av kol balechayim, only living beings have the kefil. Ma'ishal lahavi. What else could you look for? Shar balechayim. So basically, what are you saying? That this drasha would only allow us to include animals? Shoyim chayim, harechayim amr. So chayim already includes animals. Hamani mekayim geneva. So what's the point of starting with geneva? The rabbis called over. This generates a klal prata klal, which pretty much includes every item that was stolen. Okay, so basically we have a brisa which worked through the pasuk step by step to prove that in fact we have this pasuk contains the klal prata klal formula, which allows us to include all items under the banner of kefil. So the one last question that still remains is, what about the opening words of the pasuk? Imi matzeh timatzeh. What's that for? Lamali. Once it's all included, what do we need that for? Says the Gemara. Okay, but if that's what the Brisa meant to ask, then that's a real good question which has no answer. So what's the answer to that question? There's an answer to that as well. Why? Because l'rabba is called davar mehecha kamaisile. Let's go back to your suggestion that gneva is a klal. Then we have those four details; those are pratim. And then we're followed by another klal chayim. Miklal Basra, right? The last klal sort of wraps up the formula. Well, klal gufei chaim ksivbei. The last klal, right, which is chaim, only a living being. So true. Right, we had a question way back. How could you sort of combine the first klal, which is a very general expression, kaneva, any item, with the last klal, which we suggested is a klal which was chaim, because it's not really similar. It is somewhat of a limiting phrase. It's referring to living beings. We said, according to Tana de Bishmael, we can do that. But ultimately, says Rashi, even if we're going to sort of use it as a klal, but you have to sort of stay within your boundaries. You have to stay within the limits of that pasuk, of that word, which is chaim, a living being. You want to broaden, you want to expand, fine, but you can only include a Baal Chai. So, if that's the case, it defeats the whole purpose. Klal upratu klal maiko mahanile. What's the whole point of the klal pratu klal? What are you trying to include? Ila suyi kol davar, trying to include all inanimate objects, all metaltalin. You can't do that. You have no right to go past living creatures. Chaim ksiv, the last klal clearly stipulates chaim. Bali chaim in only living creatures. Midechanile, but not other items. So basically, the whole klal prat formula, which was trying to sort of include all items, didn't really pan out because it's dependent, it's hinging, it's leaning on that last klal, which is chaim, which only includes living creatures. Mishem hachi, there's your answer. That's why istrich yimatzeh timatzeh. That's why it has to begin with yimatzeh timatzeh to tell you anything and everything. Says the Gemara, 1 second. So yimatzeh timatzeh is sort of going to serve as a klal followed by another klal, and somehow we're going to turn into a klal prat a klal to allow us to include other items. Because the himatzeh is a klal, and we have all those pratim in the pasuk, which are actually said a little bit later in the pasuk, but we sort of shift that over to in between these words. Himatzeh followed by all the pratim, followed by the word timatzeh, which is another klal, so you get a klal prat a klal. What do you mean? But the words are stated elsewhere in the pasuk, not here. Amri, the question was about shnei klalis. This michiyada deninu. Himatzeh is a klal, timatzeh is another klal. They're right next to each other. There's no pratim between them. Amar Ravina. We can work it out. Like he said in Eretz Yisrael, whenever we find two general expressions situated right next to each other, we sort of shift it, we make a space, hatal prat b'neiim, we bring the details and the specifics, and we sort of cut and paste it, and we put it right here, v'doinam b'chol prat, which allows us to generate a klal prat a klal, and in this case we do it like this. Shadi, shur, we take the word shur, and we sort of paste it, we stick it right here, between these two words, to include what? Lasuya mai. What are we going to include now? Ilasuya balechayim. Is it coming to include living beings other than a shar? Mechayim nafka. It already says chayim in the pasuk, all included. Lasuya davar she'e balechayim. Oh, apparently it's coming to include even non-living creatures. With Raishachi, and the drasha goes like this. Ma haprat mefurish davar hametat v'gufei mamen. So just like the word shur is referring to something which is metaltal, it's movable, it has inherent value. I've called davar metaltal, and likewise other items which share these same elements have the din of kefil. So that's how we go. That's how we get the klal prat. The klal, we have himatzeh followed by shur, followed by timatzeh. We include other items as well. V'su, next step is shadi chamar ben himatzeh timatzeh. We have the word chamar. We'll do the same thing. We'll bring it right between these two words. Lasui mai. What are we going to include with that? Ila suy davar shein balechayim. Are we going to include even non-living creatures for kefil? We already know that from shur, mishur nafka. Lasui. Apparently, this allows us to expand it even further. Lasuya davar mesuyim, to tell you what it has to be davar mesuyim, which Rashi learned has to have a siman. The owner has to be able to prove and substantiate his ownership. Tosha says it has to be something that's defined in terms of its volume and value. You can't just claim ambiguously. Okay, so that's the point of shur. So what's the point of seh? We have nothing left to include with the word seh. What's it for? Says the Gemara, you're right, so let's fall away from klal prat klal, ella ribo umiyet v'ribohu. Instead of klal prat klal, we're going to work with a different formula called ribui, miut, and ribui. Ribui includes basically everything. Miut says, limit it somewhat. And ribui says, no, go back all the way, except for maybe, one or two things. Riba umiyet v'ribohu. Who learns like that? Because the Tana of Rabbi Shmuel. The Tana of Rabbi Shmuel. B'mayim base pam. This is by the psukim requiring us to have fins and scales on our fish, and it says b'mayim once, b'mayim again, which is a very all-inclusive general term. Any creature found in water. Ein ze klal prat. Instead of working with klal prat, since the klalim are right next to each other, we don't apply the klal prat formula. Ela riba umiyat v'riba. We apply it. We apply it. We use it as a different type of drasha, riba and miyat v'riba. And we say like this: riba hakoil. We pretty much include everything. You see, in contrast to klal prat klal, which is very limiting, it has to sort of, has to match. It has to correspond to the elements, to the characteristics of the details of the pratim. No, riba miyat v'riba says, you know what? Riba hakoil include everything. So basically, any creature you find in water needs to have the fins in the scale, pretty much everything. So, my Rabbi Kamma, yachi. So back to our sugi with the kefil. So we have himatze, timatze, that's a riboy, another riboy with miutz, nearby. We say riboy, miut, riboy, pretty much everything falls under the banner of kefil. So the question is, yachi kalhani prati lamali. So why do we need all those specific examples like shayr and seh, right? So the answer is not to set the tone, not to set the bar and the standard and say, well, any item that you want to suggest as a kefil enabled item has to conform, has to sort of fit the bill and contain the same elements and characteristics as these things. No, we're falling away from that, sort of system. We're just saying, look, everything is included, but the Torah still wants us to exempt some things. And each item is sort of representative of another sort of limitation. Why does the Torah say anything about a shor and a chamor and a seh? It's just trying to limit it somewhat, to exempt land that was stolen, slaves, or documents. There's no kefil for these things. Okay, so we're all good now. How do we know that a ganav pays kefil? We have the other pasuk, right? Shor, chamor, seh, chaim, shnayim, yishalim, which is applied in a riboy, miut, v'riba formula, including everything except for some things that we just said. Karka avodim and shtaris. Question: Geneva v'chaim lamli. So why do we need the word imatzah timatzah? The hageneva, which is a general term. We already have the riboy from himatzah timatzah. Why do we need geneva? V'chaim. What do we need the word chaim for? We didn't use chaim yet. We used 3 miyutim. We had one for karka, one for avodim, one for shtaris. We had 4. Pratim in the pasuk. We had shor, chamar, seh, and chaim. So we have gneva extra and chaim extra. Gneva chaim. Look at the Rav. It's coming to tell you Rav's halach. The Amar tells you achye lekeren ke'en sheganav. So a person steals an animal, and it went down in price since the gneva. How much does the ganav pay? You have to re-enliven, you have to sort of pick the keren, the principle, the item, bring it back to its former glory, its former value. You pay kish'as haganeva according to the value at the time of the robbery. So that's what we learn from Geneva v'chaim. You have to sort of enliven it, bring it back, the Geneva back to its former value. Now, let's go back to sort of yesterday's sugya. A person deposited his animal, entrusted his animal by his friend, and came back to collect it. Well, it's gone. Now the pasuk says, "Im yimatze haganav," if the ganav will be discovered, and im lo yimatze will not be discovered. So we pretty much reviewed it very briefly at the beginning of today's DAF. So there was machlokes in terms of how to learn these psukim, right? There were 2 approaches. According to one approach, the 2 psukim are representative of 2 different types of thievery. One is the ganav, one is the toyin tanas ganav. According to the other approach, both are going on toyin tanas ganav. How do we know that? The ganav pays kefil. That was today's sugya from the other pasuk of im himatzeh timatzeh b'yad gneva, as we just learned. Let's just go back to that discussion of yesterday. According to the approach, according to the opinion that holds that chad beganav, one pasuk is on the ganav, v'chad, the other pasuk is b'toyin tanas ganav. V'ganav atzmei, how do we know that the ganav himself pays kefil? Nafkalei, mimi matzeh ganav. That's from the first pasuk, matzeh ganav. So the question is, what about today's pasuk, which is extra, unneeded? Hi, imimotzi, timotzi, right? Today's pasuk, my daughter, what's he using it for? The Rava, for Eloi, it's for a different drasha. Dam Rava Eloi, my time at the Rav. Why does Rav tell us the following halacha? The Amar Moide Beknas. Person admits that he's liable to penalty. Let's say, he admits that he stole, which would trigger a kefil payment, which is a penalty, it's a fine. So let's say he admits. He presents us with the facts. And then Edom come running, you should know this person stole. We don't need his testimony. We can tell you. Pater. That's it. Once he became Pater, he's Pater. How do we know this is true? Which teaches us, only if the Edom were the ones who presented the facts before his admission, then the Dayanim will come and discover it and apply the kefil penalty. Prat, as opposed to a case where he's personally admitting the Marshias Atzmo, he incriminates himself, there's no kefil. Even if the Edom came later, too late. Once he admits, kefil's off the table. So that's what's learned from the pasuk in Matzeh Timatzeh. Well, now the kasha is, according to the other opinion, who needed this pasuk to teach us that a regular ganav pays kefil? The basic halacha is learned from this pasuk. So how does he know this halacha of moide b'knas v'achakach bo'edem poter? According to the other opinion, that says tarvayu b'toyin tanas ganav. Both of those psukim of yesterday are going on toyin tanas ganav, and therefore today's pasuk is needed to teach us a ganav himself. The high imimotzeh timotzi mapik leil ganav atzmi. It's needed for the regular ganav that pays kefil. So then, how do we know this halacha that we just mentioned? Marshia atzmi minolan. The answer is me'asher yashin elihim. Only if the bezin elihim is the bezin. Only the bezin can apply the kefil v'lei mashias atzma, as opposed to a person who incriminated himself. Now back. Now according to the other sheet, that the two psukim of yesterday, one is going on the ganav, who pays kefil, one on the toyin tanas ganav. So now the aisile mimatzeh timatzeh mashias atzma, who used today's pasuk of a matzeh for personal incrimination, who's pater. So then haya asher yarshin, on the other pasuk asher yarshin that we just mentioned, my dorish bey, what does he apply that pasuk for? It's extra malach. The answer is how it's for something else. L'moide b'knas pater. To tell you that when a person gets up and incriminates himself in terms of knas liabilities, he's pater. Now Rashi explains, Edom never showed up. He just got up and says, I stole whatever, I want to pay the knas, he's pater. That's a basic halacha of moed b'knas pater. And then comes the other pasuk, which tells you, well, take it a step further. A person who was moed b'knas, and even if Edom came afterwards, he's still pater. So two separate halachas, sort of one building on the other, because each one is sort of more advanced than the other. You need two psukim. Otherwise, you would just say, well, if Edom come, they sort of incriminate him independently. No, so we need two psukim for two facets, two aspects of the halacha of moed b'knas pater. But what about the other madamar? Doesn't have an extra pasuk for this. Umanda Amar Tarvayu b'toyin tanas ganav. If you hold that the two psukim of yesterday are going on toyin tanas ganav, and today's pasuk of Matzeh Timatzeh is going on the simple halacha that a ganav pays kefil, so how do we know moed b'knas pater from asher yashin elihim? But only a basic halacha of moed b'knas pater without the presence of Edom. What if Edom come later? How do we know he's pater? He's not pater because he holds moed b'knas, and then Edom come, he's not pater. V'achach bo Edom is chayiv. Because we don't need his incrimination. We don't need his admission. We have the Edom. Now, according to the opinion that yesterday's psukim, one is for the ganav, one for the toyin tanas ganav, the nafkali ganav mahasa, who learns ganav from that pasuk of yesterday. So today's pasuk of matzeh is going on like we said. Look at the Rabbi Eloi, the halacha that we just said, moed b'knas. Aval kolhani prati lamali. But that explains the Matzeh Timatzeh. Kefil only applies when the Edom came, when the Bezin. But why do we need the Shor and the Chamar? What's the point of repeating the whole story? We already know the Ganav pays Kefil for whatever he steals. So as the way you're right, not always is every detail pertinent. It's just sort of, it goes with the flow of the pasuk. Tanei Rishmal, called Parsha Shenemar V'Nishnis. Whenever you do find repetition in the Torah, there's a reason for it. And even if there's no apparent purpose for every word in that repetition, but once the pasuk repeats it, it repeats the entire package. The reason for the repetition is only elul davash and chalash ba, to present you, some sort of new twist. and everything else comes along for the ride, so to speak. Says the Gemara, Ve'emo ganav atzma b'shvua. Now the question is, just like by the Toyin Tanas Ganav, he'll only pay kefil if he first defended himself with a shvua. Correct? So the parasha over there speaks about a shomer who defended himself with a shvua, and then it was discovered that he stole, so he pays the kefil. So in reality, even the pasuk of today, it's all pretty much in the same parsha, the same topic there. So perhaps let's compare it to the Toyin Tanas Ganav, who only pays kefil through a shvua. So maybe the only time a Ganav pays kefil is if he first swore falsely. But if he just stole and then was caught, there's no kefil. Ve'emo ganav atzma b'shvua. Says the Gemara, you can't suggest as such. The sign. Rabbi Yehuda, he pays double. Even without a shvua involved. You're suggesting without a shvua. Maybe a shvua is necessary. The answer is no, it's not so. What does that mean? It's not so. The answer is like this. Why does the pasuk repeat? Why does the pasuk have to specify that a ganav who stole pays double? It doesn't have to say that. Let's just learn through a straight kal v'chomer. From a Toyin Tanas Ganav. How? Uma Toyin Tanas Ganav. The beheter asal yada. Even a shomer who got it beheter, right? He got the item beheter. It was given to him. It was entrusted with him. Put in his possession. He didn't steal it. It was 100% permissible, right? Still, if he diverts it, if he hides it, amakra, what happens? He's penalized. L'shalom trei, he pays double. Ganav atzmai, certainly a robber, a thief, middle of the night, to be surah asal yadeh. Ganav atzmai took it be'isur, he stole it. L'koshkan, of course, it should result in similar consequences. Elo shnayim yisham l'kas rachman b'ganav atzmai lamdi. So why does the pasuk stipulate separately that a ganav pays kefil? Why is that necessary? To tell you that afilu shle b'shvua, in contrast to a Toyin Tanas Ganav, whose kefil is only triggered through a shvua, a ganav does not need a shvua to trigger a kefil. Okay, so that concludes that discussion, but we have one more shaila. We had a whole drasha from the pasuk of today, Himatze Timatze Biyada Gneva, right? That pasuk has been used elsewhere. V'hai Imimatze Timatze Lacha Di Asa is coming for today's lesson. It's needed to look at the side for the other halacha, Yadai. So it says that a person stole and he matze biyada, it was discovered in his hands, and perhaps he's only chayiv kefil if he actually physically took the gneva with his hands. What about gagay, chatzerei, v'karafifim b'nayim? What if the animal that he stole actually just walked into his backyard and he's locked the door? So he didn't actually physically pick it up. It went into his gag, into his rooftop, into his yard, the chatzar kafifa, enclosed, storage place, minayin. Is he liable to kefil through that type of thievery as well? Talmud loyimar, yeah, any type of presence, any type of possession. So the pasuk has been used for that. Unavailable for today's whole drasha. Imkain, if it were so, if it's only coming to tell you that you're chayiv kefil under these circumstances, leimakra, the pasuk should use similar, terms. It would say himatze, or it would say timatze. Why do we sort of switch from one word to the other? Medishani kra. We went from himatze to timatze. There's another hidden message here. Shmamina tarti, coming to tell you two things, telling you both rushes. That firstly, kefil applies to all types of items stolen, like we said today, and also through all types of taking possession of that item, as we just mentioned now. Okay, so bottom line, lots of back and forths and drushes. Ultimately, we discovered that just like a Toyin Tanas Ganav pays kefil through a shvua, likewise a ganav as well. Well, either we learn from one pasuk, or from yesterday's pasuk, or from today's pasuk. And bottom line is it applies to any item stolen, except for from some very specific things like karka, avodim, and shtaris, and stealing from hekdesh as well. There's no kefil there. All the best to you and Atzlacha Rabbah.